She came to on crushed gravel at the bottom of a steep ravine, her body wedged among brush and broken branches. The pain arrived in waves so violent it stole her breath, and when she tried to push herself up, her arms didn't answer. She looked down and understood in a single freezing second that something irreversible had been done to her. Above her, the road was a ribbon of darkness. The man who had driven her there was gone. If she stayed where he left her, she would bleed out alone. Mary Vincent had been hitchhiking along the California coast, trying to get away from home and toward a new start. She was a teenager, traveling light, trusting strangers in the way young people sometimes did when they believed the world was mostly safe. On the night she accepted a ride from a middle-aged man in a pickup, she could not have known his name yet, or the fact that he had already decided she was not going to walk away from him. The driver introduced himself as Lawrence Singleton. At first he acted ordinary, making small talk as the miles rolled by, the headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through the night. Mary sat tense but hopeful, watching the road signs and trying to stay oriented. Then the truck turned away from the main route. The conversation changed, his voice hardened. Mary realized too late that she wasn't being taken where she thought she was going. Singleton drove into a remote area, away from traffic and houses, and stopped. What happened next was not a misunderstanding or a sudden argument. It was control. He restrained her, assaulted her, and kept her captive through the night. Mary fought when she could. She tried to reason when fighting failed. She searched for any opening, any moment where she could run. Each time, he forced her back down, reminding her with his weight and his threats that he believed he owned what happened next. By morning, he made a decision that revealed what he had intended all along. If he let her go, she could describe him. She could report him. She could survive. So he took her deeper into isolation, to a place where the road dropped off into a ravine thick with brush. He told her he was going to let her go, and for a heartbeat she wanted to believe it. Then he brought out a hatchet. Mary pleaded. She tried to bargain. She tried to make him see her as a person. He did not. What he did to her was methodical and brutal, and it was meant to make sure she could not follow him, could not call for help, could not point at him in a courtroom. When it was over, he dragged her to the edge and shoved her down the embankment, leaving her broken among the branches, certain she would die where he had thrown her. At the bottom of the ravine, Mary did the only thing she could do. She refused to stay still. She pressed the ends of her injured arms against her body, trying to slow the bleeding. She forced herself to breathe through the shock. She told herself a single goal: get back to the road. There was no hero music, no sudden burst of strength. There was only a terrified teenager in agony, crawling and climbing through brush that tore at her skin, slipping in dirt, dragging herself upward with what she had left. The climb took hours. Every movement made her dizzy. The sun rose higher, baking the hillside. Flies gathered. Thorns caught her clothing and ripped it. She fell back more than once, sliding down and having to start again. At points, she blacked out and came back to awareness with her face in dirt, forcing herself to move because stopping meant dying. She used her legs, her shoulders, her teeth on branches when she had to, inching upward through pain that felt unreal. When she finally reached the road, she did not collapse and wait. She put herself in view, knowing that if a car passed without stopping, she might not get another chance. A vehicle approached and slowed. Mary stepped toward it, bloodied, shaking, her voice raw. The driver stopped. Help was called. In a place where Singleton had expected her to vanish, Mary Vincent was seen. Doctors fought to keep her alive. She was treated for massive blood loss and traumatic injuries, stabilized, and kept under constant care. She was interviewed while still recovering, and she gave what details she could. The truck, the man, the direction of travel, the sound of his voice. Against the odds, she had survived long enough to become a witness. In the hospital, the first days blurred into tubes, bandages, and exhaustion. Surgeons fought to stabilize her, and nurses watched her for shock and infection. Mary learned fast that surviving the ravine was only the beginning. Rehabilitation meant relearning balance, learning to eat and dress again, and enduring the stare of strangers who didn't know where to put their eyes. She was still a teenager, and yet her life had become a case file with a heartbeat. Detectives took her statement again and again, careful with every detail. They worked the route, the vehicle, and the description she could give them. When Mary was strong enough, she identified Lawrence Singleton as the man who had picked her up. The arrest did not bring peace. It opened the next ordeal, sitting in a courtroom and turning a private nightmare into public testimony. Police began looking for the attacker. Mary later identified Lawrence Singleton as the man who had picked her up. The case moved into court, where Mary faced the person who had tried to erase her. She testified. She described what he had done and what it had cost her. Her presence alone was an indictment. He had failed to kill her. The jury convicted him, but the sentence revealed another kind of horror. Under the laws at the time, Singleton received a term that many people saw as shockingly light compared to the violence he had inflicted. Mary rebuilt her life in the shadow of what happened. She learned to live without her forearms, using prosthetics and relearning ordinary tasks that most people never thought about. She carried the physical pain and the psychological aftermath, and she carried something else too. The knowledge that she had dragged herself out of a ravine that was meant to be her grave. Years later, after serving his sentence, Singleton was released. The public outcry returned, fueled by the fear that a man capable of that level of violence was free again. Mary's name resurfaced in news stories and warnings, a reminder of what he had done and what the system had allowed. After leaving California, Singleton attacked another woman, Roxanne Hayes, in Florida. She did not survive. The violence Mary had escaped was not contained by a sentence. It had repeated itself. Mary Vincent's survival was not just endurance. It was resistance. A man tried to reduce her to silence, and she refused. She climbed out. She spoke. She lived. And the fact that she walked into the daylight after everything he did remained one of the most terrifying and astonishing survival stories in modern American crime. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.